Before we get into this episode, there's something that might be of interest that I wanted to tell you about. Scene and Heard, who run this podcast, have been asked by Scotland Food and Drink to undertake a strategic review of the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards. Now, these Excellence Awards have been going for almost 20 years and are a huge mainstay of the food and drink sector. But it's time to ensure that they're still relevant. So if you have ever been involved in the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards, or even if you've ever had an opinion about them, we would love for you, please, to complete our survey. So if you go to the onFARM Twitter, which is at @on_farm UK, and click the link in the bio, there will be a tab in there that will take you to the survey, and it should only take you a very short while to complete, but we would be enormously grateful. Hello, this is onFARM. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm Anna Davis. This time we're in a farmhouse kitchen with steaming cups of tea and lovely homemade shortbread, hearing all about the brilliant work of farming charity RSABI. Hope you enjoy. So I'm joined today by Mags Grainger, who is the welfare manager at RSABI.
Hello.
Nina Clancy, the chief executive, although I know she doesn't like that title.
Hi there.
Next to me is Ewan Pate, who is a man of many hats. He is the chairman of RSABI, a journalist, and just as importantly, a farmer.
Hello.
And also joined by Colin and Lynne Lowrie, whose kitchen we're in today, and they farm in the hills of East Lothian.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes, so we're in a beautiful kitchen. We're warmed by the Arga because it's a miserable day outside. There are 2 large Labradors and one most adorable Labrador puppy sleeping behind us, currently looking very peaceful, but time will tell. So I think I might start by having a chat with Ewan, if that's okay with you, Ewan. Can you tell me, first of all, a little bit about how you came to be chairman of RSABI and why?
And why? Yes, that's a good question. RSABI is a charity that I've known really all my life. My mother used to be a collector for RSABI. I've been aware of it. You know, it's a charity, it's well over 100 years old. It is a rural charity. It's particularly for farmers, for those who have worked on the land, for those who have given their whole life to the land, and who, for various reasons, need help, either emotional help, financial help, practical help. I could see it was for my industry, which is farming, and that's why I feel so passionately about it.
Can you tell me a little bit about some of your fellow trustees and where they're from and maybe what their motivations are as well?
Yes, I mean, we really have a superb group of trustees. There are 9 of us, plus a couple of co-opted trustees. They all have skills, financial skills, legal skills, farming skills. I'm very, very lucky to have them. My vice chairman is David Leggett, well-known auctioneer. They're all basically of the farming industry, and that's a huge help.
Mags, you are the welfare manager, so you're in charge of the helpline staff and the rest of the team, the welfare team. Can you tell us a little bit about your day-to-day life and how you go about as a team helping farmers who've hit upon hard times?
Well, it's quite a varied role that I play and the case officers and the helpline staff play. We have case officers that visit clients throughout Scotland since April this year. So the last 6 months, there's probably been about 390 visits made in houses in Scotland. We've got a helpline that we've probably done in the last 6 months, about 1,000 calls in and out. So we support people in their own homes, make sure if they're vulnerable, they get regular calls to make sure they're all right. And then the case officers go out and look at the practical, financial and any other emotional support that's needed out there. So every day is different and every client we visit or talk to have a different scenario that we try and help with.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how do you come to know of who's out there that might need help from RSABI?
Well, some people self-refer. Some people have heard about our work through other people, and primarily we get quite a lot of referrals from statutory agencies like the RPID, QMS. We also get referrals from banks. We get referrals from Macmillans. We get referrals locally from local citizens' advices. The only thing I would say is often we could have done with being referred to about 3 or 4 months before. Farmers by nature appear to leave things to the last minute and often would like to get in touch quicker.
It's really important then if you are an accountant going down farm roads to speak to your clients and customers, or if you work for NFU Mutual and you're out visiting people, or anybody that's in regular day-to-day contact with members of the farming community, that you keep your eyes peeled and your ears open for where they might need help, and to refer to RSABI if you've got any concerns. Would that be right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There can be lots of signs that things aren't going well, either on the farm or on the person, but the simplest way to think about it is something not right? Is something different that you can't put your finger on? And often that can be a sign that there's that things aren't going as well as they used to, and the earlier we get involved, the better.
And is that done in confidence? If I was to refer someone, for example, is that done in confidence, obviously, yeah?
Yeah, everything that we do is fully confidential. If you are worried about somebody else and you phone us in, we'll give you hints on how to help. But ideally, if we can get permission to phone the client from the client, so if you tell us that they've said it's okay to phone, we will phone them directly and get involved. And by referring somebody doesn't mean you get to hear what's going on. It's very much not the case.
So once you've made the referral, it's then, yeah, absolutely. Nina, you're keen to come in now.
There's about 80% of the clients that we help and support come through referrals. So it is a really important aspect of what we do. Training's available for any organisation that wants to sort of help with their staff and how to spot those signs, because it's all important within the industry that we look out for each other.
Well, absolutely. And it must be very difficult for anybody who, even though they may have acknowledged that they want to make contact, it's difficult to actually pick up the phone. And I think that's where I was keen to come and ask Colin, I suppose pride is one word you'd associate with not just farmers, but many people out there in industry. But some people may be prevented from picking up the phone. But how do you think we can help them feel encouraged and safe to pick up the phone if they think that they need help themselves?
Well, there's probably a stigma attached to asking for help. What we're doing today is one aspect of helping, and Nina and the team are getting the message out about RSABI that there's nothing wrong in asking for help if you need it. I do think probably partners or friends, they're probably or people, as you suggested, who are travelling around and meeting farmers and other people in the countryside, and if they notice anything different or untoward.
Mags?
Yeah, I think sometimes folk don't actually understand the depth of the work that we do. We've got a very holistic service in terms of practical, financial and emotional support, with the majority of people looking for that practical and emotional support. So the earlier that they can come to us, the more options we can tend to have. Often if leaving it too late, especially if you're talking about issues with banks or statutory agencies, the more time you give us, the more options we have for you.
Yeah, I always thought RSABI was to help people, pay for TV licences or things like that, or if they're in hard times, financial help. But I think the emphasis has obviously changed more to mental well-being and emotional help.
I think one of the biggest problems is a lot of people don't understand that they're actually needing help. And in a way, you can understand why they're not being referred quickly enough, because people don't actually realise the situation they're actually in.
What might be some of the warning signs, if you're worried about your neighbour or a relative?
I mean, they could be too long to list, but if you're talking about the farmyard, is it less tidy than it used to be? Is there things not getting done on farm that used to be getting done before, which could show the sort of lack of motivation to get things done? I mean, if you're talking about the farmer themselves, is their personality change? Are they drinking a bit more? Are they still in bed? Or they're sleeping a lot more? Drinking a lot more can also be a sign. And just the general, is something changed? Is things not getting done? Is the house cold? If the farm's cold, it could be a sign that they're struggling financially to put the heating on. And I think, again, it's about RSABI and the holistic service that we give, in terms of we've spent a lot of time building up our toolkit, as it were, so that we've got everything in place that we need to help people that are struggling. And that could be from getting a business report done via the Scottish Government to see how the business could be managed effectively going forward, to accessing counselling services for people because of the long waiting list for NHS just now.
Ewan?
Yes, I think these are really important points that Mags has made. I mean, the whole farming industry act as the eyes and ears, auctioneers, vets, representatives of feed companies, all these sort of people who go onto farms, they actually are the first people to notice that something's wrong. For example, livestock coming into a market not looking as good as it should do, and you think, gosh, there might be something wrong here. So I think my message would be for the whole industry to work together, to be alert and not to be frightened to make referrals or to speak to people.
people acknowledge that farming can be a lonely occupation. And so it's crucial that people who are visiting those farms on a regular basis keep their eyes open to see what's changing and what might be going on. Because otherwise you could have people who aren't seeing another human soul for weeks on end. And we need to make sure that that's not happening.
That's one of the things that's changed, that there's so many farms are just single-handed now. There's just far fewer people working on farms.
Yes,
so people can go a long time, even if they're not feeling withdrawn, they can just go a long time without speaking to anybody, and that's not good.
We've had several helpline cases where we phone out to people that are lonely and isolated, and that could be on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis. Where somebody's struggling, having that regular contact is really important. And another case that we had, a farmer hadn't actually spoken to someone for 6 weeks. It's quite incredible that can happen in this day and age, but it happens. So, keeping an eye out for people is really important.
Absolutely. Lynne, you had mentioned, though I think one of the dogs is having a bit of a dream because she made a funny noise down there. Lynne, you mentioned earlier on, we were talking about phone calls, that you're potentially keen to volunteer for RSABI perhaps next year. Can you tell us what kind of motivated you to start thinking about that?
Yeah. Yes, our daughter, RSABI, very kindly, Fiona was able to do a work experience with them, and it opened my eyes. And I wasn't aware how many lonely people there were, who just needed somebody to talk to on a regular basis about everyday things that they probably see on the telly. And it also made you realise how much more help people are needing. Farmers live in rural communities, tend to want to help each other anyway, but often they just don't really know that people are lonely and not that far away from them. And I think that's another thing, is just raising awareness, where people do need help. So yes, I'm hoping to be on the phones or support wherever I can.
Yeah, Mags, I think probably if we all sat for a moment and thought we could think of somebody we know that may need help from RSABI, but we might be a bit reticent to refer them for fear of being seen to be prying in their lives. How do you advise people to overcome that? What can we do?
Well, first of all, you can phone us yourself to give us an idea of what's going on, so we can give you advice or give you a way to support your friend or whoever it is you're concerned about. But primarily, we would want you to ask that person for permission for RSABI to make contact. And if we get that permission, we will get in contact with them and start looking at how we can look at the issues that they're having now to help them move forward.
Yeah, I think it's really important that people are aware that we will never contact somebody just out of the blue. It's really important that we do get that referral, that permission. And that conversation can be quite tough. If you've got somebody there that you're really worried about, how do you actually go about saying, I think you need help? But having that conversation is so important. The last thing you'd want is to not do something and then something awful happen. And we all know, agricultural suicide rates are absolutely appalling. And I personally just want to see an end to that. And we're here to provide support in those circumstances. And I think we all know someone who's taken their own life and wished we could have done something about it.
Yeah, I think from a personal perspective, I'd far rather take a small risk having a difficult conversation than have another conversation with myself down the line. What if? And I think that's really we all need to remember that.
I lost a really good friend about 6 years ago, and I wish I'd been more aware of RSABI at the time, and it might have made a difference. He was getting help right enough, but maybe RSABI with a more intimate knowledge of agricultural and associated trades might have just made a difference there.
There's one point just in following what Colin said there. Before I was so involved, there was a perception there was people that needed help and there's people that would never need help, and there were two separate factions. But that's absolutely not the case. I've discovered that quite starkly now. An awful lot of the cases which do come to us can be people who are motoring on absolutely perfectly, and then things go wrong. It's often a combination of things. It might be a combination of illness and a market, say the beef market or whatever, the milk market, in trouble. That puts stress on them, and suddenly, from motoring along absolutely perfectly, they're in trouble, and that can happen quite quickly. So don't think it's a them and us situation. It's all of us in it together.
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody is immune, because it just takes for something in your life to change, and you're in a completely different situation. And again, We all know people who've been in that situation.
There is an issue in farming in the sense that it's 1% of the working population, but 22% of workplace deaths. Our understanding, and we've seen it ourselves, is poor mental well-being can actually lead to lack of concentration, more risk-taking, lack of motivation that maybe stops you putting on a gate that you should have put on ordinarily. So yeah, we think poor mental health leads to that as well, apart from the pressures in farming itself that leads to that poor mental health.
Yeah, I've been farming for almost 40 years, and there's been a huge change in the number of people who work on farms. Even the reps that come in and see you, there's much more done on the phone, which is fine. But I like selling my sheep on a Monday morning at St Boswell's, go out in the market and have a chat with guys around the table at breakfast time. And it's good just to do that, just to, so we're all in the same boat. And RSABI can sort of do that to other people who maybe need just a phone call and help in that way.
I think it's probably fairly well known that not all farming families get on with each other all of the time. That can sometimes be an issue that leads to poor mental well-being or financial issues. But I know that RSABI has a trick up its sleeve to help with people in that situation as well.
Yeah, we do. And it's one of these things, it's succession. It's just will planning with a business. But it's really important to do it early enough and have a conversation as one big group. So we can actually access mediators if the situation's beyond them being able to do it themselves. Access mediators to come out and be able to help with that role. Anybody that's listened to this podcast that haven't thought about what they would have wanted to have done if they'd gotten kicked by the bull yesterday needs to think about that today. Because often what you think you want done won't necessarily happen unless you plan it. We do get calls from both the children concerned that they're not getting, I'm saying children, but offspring, concerned that they're not getting what they think they were going to get out of the farm. And then we've also had calls from farmers themselves feeling that there's a wee bit of tension in the family because the decision that they think they want to happen isn't suiting everybody in the family. And really, without having that conversation altogether, it's not going to be resolved. We're not mediators ourselves, but we can access them for you.
I didn't actually realise you did that, Mag, so that's quite a useful and important factor as well. Yeah.
I think it's it's becoming more and more clear as our discussion goes on that, whatever the help, RSABI has a solution. That might be financial, it might be to do with mental well-being, it might be to do with disagreements within families. But I think more or less every issue that farming families face, there is a way in which RSABI can help.
I'd really like folk to recognise it as a service to the agricultural industry. We're here to help and support. The charity issue sometimes puts people off. But if you treat it as a service that's there, that's free, that's useful, it's effective, I think more people would pick up the phone and use us. So, it's so important, and the quicker the better.
Why do you think the charity status is off-putting for people, or can be?
I think, the farming sector can be quite traditional and they don't want to have to ask for help as such or, get charity help. But in this day and age, things have moved on. So I like to compare it to if you have terminal cancer, you wouldn't think twice about using Macmillan's, for example. That's the kind of attitude we need to create within the industry so that people see us and know that they can phone us for any problem that they have.
To describe it as a service is absolutely correct, but it's a sort of a self-supporting, an industry self-supporting service. And that's why I'm so keen to promote the supporter scheme, to become a business supporter, as Colin has done, and I do as well, and many others do, is really supporting this service. And I think it's so important that that's the way it's done, that the industry owns this service, helps to fund it, and, if need be, benefits from it. It's a great circular argument.
Well, I totally agree, Ewan, and I think if we think about all of, I'm not obviously going to name any names, but if we think about all of the businesses out there that rely on Scottish agriculture, whether they be feed merchants, tractor dealerships, vets, whatever, I think all of those businesses have a moral obligation to support RSABI. That's my personal belief, because they are benefiting. If it wasn't for a healthy agricultural industry, they wouldn't be surviving either. So I think that's a really good point, Ewan.
And often they get a direct benefit because sometimes the line of communications have no longer exist, especially if there's outstanding bills. And if somebody comes to RSABI, we can get these communications lines opened again. There can be a direct benefit for those that could be supporting our industry.
Well, was there not a recent case where there was a farmer just about to be taken to court from a feed company? They'd fallen out over something actually quite trivial right at the beginning, but it had escalated. So when the case officer went in and we found out a bit more information, we were able to buy that crucial time. The court action then ended up not happening, and there was a bill payment plan put in place over a longer period, and it was fine. These things happen all the time. It could be an inspection with the Department of Agriculture. It could be a breakdown in communication with your bank. It could be, a vet's worried that the bill's not paid and therefore has to go back in and still treat sick animals, but they're wondering whether they're going to get paid again. So there's loads of examples of that out there. We are all aware of it.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes you've got, with everything, I think you've got to try and nip it in the bud, and a call to RSABI might just be the way to do that before it escalates.
And I think it's important to realise that contact with RSABI is about helping people move forward. We also have the experience to go into farms and understand where there may be opportunities for benefits or other opportunities to help in terms of energy or adaptations if people have had accidents or illness. And last year we actually raised about £250,000 for clients that we got for them just because we were there and realised that there was money missing that they could have been having. In fact, quite recently we had one person that went in and the case officer realised they hadn't been getting the entitlement that they should have been getting for the last 2 years, and within a couple of days they got a cheque for £18,000.
So actually, for want of a better word, I suppose signposting is key in that or assistance in that you, RSABI, might not be able to directly help, but you can tell people what they might be missing out on in terms of other benefits and direct them to the right places that they maybe don't know themselves.
Yes, but we do a little bit more than that, because if you expect people to do all that for themselves, quite often it will never happen.
No, absolutely.
So we'll facilitate an appointment with Citizens Advice. We might go along with them and help them fill in the form where needed. So yes, we're cleverer about how we use other expert people to come in and help us, but we're always there to give that practical support to make sure it actually happens.
Yeah. And I suppose we've talked quite a lot about helping individuals, which you do, in such an amazing way, but you don't just help individuals, you help maybe couples or families as well if they need assistance. Mags, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, we've probably had a massive increase in the amount of younger people, younger working farmers and farm workers coming to us now. In-work poverty is a real thing. So we've spent a lot of time supporting those, especially if they've been diagnosed with serious illness or accidents. So not only do we then look at the situation, we've had a young family whereby the dad was diagnosed with a serious illness. So what we did there was we got a business review done to look at how the business could be managed, maybe on a smaller scale that they could manage. And then because of the income loss during the initial diagnosis of the illness, we supported the family just with Tesco vouchers to make sure that they didn't have any difficulty eating until we got benefits in place that they needed.
I don't want to embarrass Mags and Nina, but I am truly impressed with the quality of work that they do and with the skill that our case officers deploy when they go out and about. These are really nice people, and they are extremely knowledgeable about what they're doing.
We've said we all know somebody, but there will be many people listening to this podcast who will be thanking their lucky stars that they're in a really strong and positive position in their lives at the moment. But it's still really relevant for them to be listening because they can help RSABI. If they don't need help themselves, they're in a perfect position to provide help. And there are many different ways in which people out there can help RSABI. Can you just outline a few of them, Nina?
Yeah, we spend about £1 million a year in charitable activities, and that's growing with 25 to 30 new clients a month at the moment.
Wow.
And we're eating into our reserves. So what we're trying to do is to get many people associated with the industry to contribute a small amount annually and be a supporter of the charity, an annual supporter. And you can do that through your business, you can do that on an individual basis, and it's growing slowly, but we'd really like people to sign up to that, and that's available on the website. Colin, I think you've signed up, haven't you?
Yeah, we signed up recently. Actually, I heard Nina at a local monitor farm meeting, and she did a very persuasive case on talking about the benefits that RSABI does to the agricultural community. So I had no hesitation in becoming a supporter.
I mean, it's really, really important. So it's £150 for a business supporter, and that can fund 2 case officer visits to go out and really help find the practical solutions needed to move a farmer and his family out of their difficulties. £500 could fund 10 counselling sessions. The NHS and their services are really pushed, and from going to see a GP to actually getting further help can be 6 to 9 months, and that can end up, someone going through into a real crisis. We're able to provide those counselling sessions and unplug that gap to avoid that crisis. It's really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and an important part of our work, and one I'm really impressed with, is the helpline we have, which is we have financial help to run that from the Royal Highland and Agricultural Society of Scotland, and that's really much appreciated. But we're not only taking calls in through the helpline, we're now able to put calls out so people can get a monthly call, a weekly call as required to see if they're okay and speak to somebody. And I think that line of communication is one we didn't have before and is hugely important now.
I think you probably just hit the nail on the head there, Ewan. Communication is the key word, and I think anybody out there who is already knowledgeable about or supportive of RSABI should be talking about it. I think, everybody needs to overcome their pride and start having conversations just like we are now about the work that RSABI does, and everybody out there who supports the charity is an ambassador, and we really need their help to spread that word and get everybody talking about the charity and how it can help.
Absolutely.
Now, despite the serious nature of what RSABI does, there can and there is a fun element to what you do. And I think that's really important as well. One small example is people are able to buy brilliant Christmas cards, which support the charity. But there are other events that you organise and run throughout the year that are designed to fundraise, but also for people to have fun. So can you tell us a bit about those, Nina?
Our flagship one is the Great Glen Challenge, and for everybody that's competed in it, apart from you're absolutely crazy because it's really, really hard, it fundraises a huge amount of money for us. So that's teams of 4, and 1 walks, 1 cycles, 1 runs, and 1 kayaks, and it's all held in the Great Glen. So go from Fort Augustus down to Fort William. We've had 1 year where there's been absolutely no rain, and it was beautiful, and then this year it never stopped raining the whole time. I mean, they were all like drowned rats. They were amazing, amazing people. And I take my hat off to them because it was really, really hard. But there's a great team spirit.
Yes,
there's lots of organisations and agricultural businesses that get involved in that, and they actually love it. We had 26 teams of 4 plus support drivers and other hangers-on, as I'd like to say, all in the hotel at night. The atmosphere was buzzing, and it was just great fun. It was really good fun.
Absolutely. And I can speak from experience because I participated a couple of years ago in the cycling, and I came second last. But I still enjoyed it, and it didn't dampen my enthusiasm for RSABI.
You were covered in mud as well.
Oh, I was. Yeah. My excuse is that I'd just recently had a baby, but I don't think that was actually the real reason why I was so hopeless. Mags, I hope you've got the helpline number etched in your memory, because I'm going to ask you to give it to us now, if you could, please.
Okay. Our helpline number is 0300 111 4166. And I'll say it again, 0300 111 4166. And please call as early as you can. The more time we have, it's much easier to help.
Can I ask everybody listening to actually plug that into your phone? Because we've all kind of had a big discussion today about how life can chuck a curveball at you. But if you put it in your phone and something happens, you've got it right there handy.
Thank you. Mags, just another quick practical question. What are the hours in which people can call the helpline?
The helpline's open 365 days a year, Christmas and New Year included, and it's open from 7 in the morning till 11 at night.
So that's hugely important information for anybody who might need to pick up the phone. What about if somebody out there is listening and they're thinking, right, okay, today's the day, I'm going to sign up as a business supporter. How do they do that, Nina?
They can phone the office on 0131 472 4166, or if they're digitally minded, they can go through the website and very easily plug in details there. If they'd like a chat about some of the other services that we provide, the mental health training, how to spot the signs, etc., it's probably best to phone the office and we can get a development officer out to visit them. We've got Andrew, Margot and Mary Ann all working hard to try and get people signed up. So I guess the other plea out there is if they do get in touch with you, please give them some time to have a chat and see if it's something you're willing to do.
We shouldn't forget the volunteers who are a huge help to us.
Absolutely,
And I'm really delighted to hear Lynn saying what she said earlier on and her intention to become a volunteer. I mean, that's super news.
Yes, I mean, I've been to the Great Glen Challenge many times and you see a lot of familiar faces who are people there, many of whom are farmers or connected to the farming industry who are there. They've travelled all that way to give their time for nothing because they want to help steward or help organise, and it's all required to help the cogs keep turning. So thank you very much for listening to another episode of the onFARM podcast. We'd love you to keep in touch with us and give us your feedback. You can engage with us on Twitter at @on_farm UK. Thank you so much to all of our contributors, and the 3 dogs have been fantastic and kept pretty quiet for us. So enough of my voice. I'd like you to hear, last of all, from Nina of RSABI about how you can get in touch if you think you might need help.
Yeah, if you're struggling or know someone who is, please get them to pick up the phone. The helpline is there available for everybody 365 days a year. It's 0300 111 4166. Thank you very much.